Every great art movement has its pioneers, artists whose work doesn't just define an era, but shapes everything that comes after it. When we think of art history, names like Vincent van Gogh, Paul Cézanne or Paul Gauguin immediately come to mind. Their paintings changed the direction of art and inspired generations of artists. The Pokémon franchise has pioneers too. Not because they painted masterpieces that hang in museums, but because they created the visual identity of one of the biggest entertainment franchises in history. And every Pokémon card you have ever held can trace its origins back to one man. His name is Ken Sugimori. When Pokémon released their first games in Japan in 1996, players were introduced to 151 creatures unlike anything they had seen before. But on the Game Boy, those creatures were little more than monochrome sprites. The hardware could only display a handful of shades of grey, leaving much of each Pokémon to the player's imagination. To truly understand what these creatures looked like, players turned to another source, the official artwork. That artwork was created by Ken Sugimori. As Game Freak's lead character designer and illustrator, Sugimori played a central role in shaping the appearance of the original Pokémon. Working alongside Satoshi Tajiri and the rest of the development team, he transformed gameplay ideas into memorable creatures with distinct personalities and silhouettes. His illustrations became the first complete look at Pokémon as living creatures, not as collections of pixels, but as believable animals with wide emotion and character, and that distinction would change everything. What makes Sugimori's artwork so remarkable isn't complexity, it's simplicity. At first glance, his illustrations almost seem understated. Soft watercolor washes, clean ink outlines, very little background, no dramatic explosions, no exaggerated action poses. Every decision directs your attention to a single subject, the Pokémon itself. Rather than overwhelming the viewer with detail, Sugimori focused on clarity. Every Pokémon has a silhouette that can be recognized instantly. Pikachu's rounded ears, Snorlax's massive body, Skydi's bladed arms. Even without color, most of these designs remain immediately recognizable. That's one of the hallmarks of exceptional character design. A great character doesn't need excessive detail, it needs a memorable shape. But shape alone wasn't enough. Sugimori understood that every Pokémon also needed personality. Look at Bulbasaur. Its relaxed posture and gentle expression make it appear calm and approachable. Charizard stands confidently, almost daring the viewer to challenge it. Mew seems playful and mysterious at the same time. Without reading a single Pokédex entry, you already understand something about each creature. That's visual storytelling, and it's one of the reasons Pokémon has remained timeless. When the Pokémon Trading Card Game launched later that same year, the artists faced an interesting challenge. They weren't inventing Pokémon. Sugimori had already done that. Instead, they had to answer a new question. how do you take these iconic character designs and transform them into works of art that fit inside a trading card? Some artists choose realism, others focused on action. Some experimented with unusual colors or abstract compositions, but every single one of them began with Sugimori's designs. His influence wasn't limited to the handful of cards he illustrated during the early years of the Pokémon Trading Card Game. It extended to every Pokémon that appeared on every card, because before an artist could interpret Charizard, someone first had to create Charizard. Sugimori himself would go on to illustrate hundreds of Pokémon cards throughout the history of the trading card game. His artwork became instantly recognizable. Unlike many other illustrators, Sugimori rarely relied on dramatic lighting or elaborate backgrounds. Instead, he trusted the strength of the Pokémon's design. His illustrations feel almost timeless. Looking at one today feels remarkably similar to looking at one in 1996. That's a rare achievement. Art styles often follow trends. Sugimori's work has remained unmistakably his own for decades. Perhaps that's why his influence reaches so far beyond Pokémon. Character designers across games, animation, and illustration often talk about the importance of strong silhouettes and readable designs. Sugimori's work demonstrates those principles beautifully. His Pokémon aren't memorable because they are complicated. They are memorable because every line has a purpose. Every color supports the design. Every expression tells you something about the creature you are looking at. That's the difference between drawing a monster and creating a character. Today's Pokémon is illustrated by hundreds of artists from around the world. Every expansion introduces new styles: oil paintings, digital art, clay models, embroidery, traditional Japanese techniques. Every artist brings something different. Yet despite that incredible diversity, one thing has never changed. Every illustrator begins with the same foundation: the Pokémon themselves. And those foundations were built by Ken Sugimori. His artwork didn't simply define how Pokémon looked. It defined how generations of artists would come to understand them. Without his vision, Pokémon card art would almost certainly look very different today. In our next episode, we will meet the artist who transformed those character designs into some of the most iconic trading cards ever printed. The man behind the base set Charizard, Mitsuhiro Arita. And if you like, leave a like on this video. And I would really appreciate if you leave a follow too. We will see each other again. Take good care of yourself, pretty soul.